Should we leave it a couple more minutes?
I think we're already live, aren't we?
Yes.
I'm easy. I'm completely easy.
There's no one here though. Oh no, there are people here. Okay. Yeah. Hi guys. Can I just ask everyone that's joining to make sure that they're muted and that their cameras are off as they join? Thank you, thank you. Thank you all for joining. I'm not sure whether we should just wait another couple of seconds just to let people come in, but I think people will come in. Yeah, thank you so much for joining. This is the first live stream that us over in the Lost Along the Line team are doing. Hopefully there's going to be more coming. Yeah, this is one being hosted by Extinction Rebellion UK, so we're really grateful to have this platform to share what we've been doing. So yeah, I'm Talia. I've been working as the impact producer for Lost Along the Line, so I've been doing all the social media and all of the promotion and everything. I've also an activist. I have been on the campaign against HS2 for about a year and a half now. I've spent just over the past year living on site. As you can see, I'm currently in one of the ancient woodlands that are threatened by HS2 on phase 2A of the route. Yeah, I'll speak more about that in a minute. I'll pass over to Ben to introduce himself.
Hi everyone, my name's Benjamin Ward. Sometimes I also go by Mothman because I'm pretty obsessed with moths, but I do love all wildlife. And yeah, I've been involved with the HS2 campaign. I was really fortunate to be able to write and present Lost Along the Line, which is the film that we'll be talking about today. And yeah, like, fire any questions over to us. I think the questions are in the chat, so if you want to post any questions, put them in the Zoom chat, and Talia will take a look at those and we'll try to answer them. So I don't know how you want to kick things off, Talia.
Yeah, I mean, I've just seen that someone in the chat has said that they're struggling with the audio. I'm not sure if anyone else is having that problem, but please do say if there are any problems with audio or anything during this live stream. Yeah, so we're going to be we've taken a couple of questions that we have received on social media over the last 24 hours, but we'll be taking questions from the chat on this Zoom link. So if you put any questions you have in there, that would be great. In the meantime, we're going to play the trailer for Lost Along the Line for you. You can watch the full documentary, is now live on our website, so you can go and watch it there if you haven't already. I really recommend that you do because it's a really incredible moving film. But yeah, now we're going to show the trailer for you very quickly.
We know that we need this habitat. We know that we're suffering from colossal biodiversity loss. As species have become endangered, they've been added to various lists which define what you can and can't do to them. It appears that you can get around that to destroy these animals or their homes. It's about saying, listen, this is important. This is very, very important.
Arriving here last night, I thought it might be a bit of a challenge to film this wildlife. So the wildlife doesn't know what's going on, like it's still using this space.
I've got a little camera trap here. I'm just going to set that up and see if we get evidence of any badgers coming.
Technically the first hard evidence.
If Natural England are giving out licences with specific terms in them, then what is the point?
HS2 is a huge infrastructure project to head through 108 ancient woodlands.
Saplings to replace an ancient woodland.
The Amazon, who are we to say don't burn those forests when we're still cutting them down?
Living in trees, we can slow their destruction.
We think there might be an eviction.
We don't have the money. Get on the bike! It's going to be stopped at some point. How many more ancient woodlands need to be destroyed till we get to that point?
2.4% of ancient woodland left, our natural national treasure. We've got to make a last stand for every single woodland, a last stand for wildlife.
So there you go. Yeah, so I'm not sure if that was a bit laggy for anyone else, but the full trailer and the full documentary are now on our website, which was mentioned there, but it's www.lostalongtheline.com. So you can go and watch that to your heart's content over there. Yeah, so as I said, please do put any questions in the chat. We won't be taking any questions from on social media, but we will from this Zoom. So please put any questions in the chat that you want to ask. But in the meantime, we have a couple that we got from social media that we're going to answer. So firstly, one that we get a lot is how we both got involved, but previous to creating this film, how we both got involved and why we both got involved with the campaign against HS2. Ben, do you want to go first in answering that?
Yeah, sure. So as a wildlife conservationist and just generally very passionate about wildlife, I've been involved in campaigning for wildlife and wildlife activism for some time now. And I'd always heard about HS2 and I looked into HS2. And then when some of the deforestation really started to ramp up last year, I was approached by people on the ground to come and check out some of the stuff that was going on. Some of the things I was hearing was absolutely kind of mind-blowing. And I'd also had some previous experience in ancient woodland management with the Wildlife Trust. So I head there primarily about issues with badgers, because badgers are one of our most protected animals in the UK, and they're actually a people's protected animal. A lot of animals are protected because they're endangered or in decline. Badgers, although they're in healthy numbers, are actually a protected animal due to people standing up for them, because you know, back before mid-90s, people just bulldoze over badger sets and destroy badger sets, and there was a lot of badger persecution. So it was from people kind of lobbying that the badger became protected. Just a little fact there. So yeah, I went there to check out some of the badger sets, because apparently I originally went to Crackley Woods in Warwickshire, because apparently the HS2 is saying there weren't active badger sets there, and it was thought that there were, and lots of dead badgers were found around that area of the HS2 construction work. And then as soon as I saw the devastation with my own eyes, I then thought, yeah, I really want to get involved with this campaign. And let alone the fact that I just couldn't believe the amount of ancient woodlands that were being impacted and destroyed, and ancient trees that were being destroyed, especially going from having to, you know, very meticulously work within ancient woodlands previously. But also because the lack of respect and lack of just lack of respect that was given to the ancient woodlands when HS2 was working with them. So then that's how I got involved with the campaign, and then obviously met loads of amazing campaigners along the way. So that's primarily what got me involved with the HS2 campaign against HS2. How was it for you, Talia?
So I came more from the kind of activist scene, had been very involved with Extinction Rebellion for a couple of years, as well as like other groups and movements, and was kind of feeling very demoralized by lockdown, and lockdowns kind of making it so difficult to engage with the kind of work and activism that I've been doing previously. And I similarly heard about the campaign against HS2 through XR, through Chris Packen's campaign, and went along kind of as lockdown eased up a bit back in May 2020, last year, yeah. And kind of just got hooked being out there and partly seeing the destruction that was happening, but also kind of spending time and getting to know like the incredible communities that were resisting that, that kind of come from a whole range of backgrounds, and a real broad and incredible kind of coalition of groups. And especially having worked for so long within Extinction Rebellion, it was really, really wonderful to kind of get out and see what other work was being done and other movements that were being built out there. Yeah, and I kind of just got hooked and then spent most of summer and autumn last year on site, and have recently come out again, and I'm in Bluebell Woods, the first time that I've been up north of Birmingham to see what's happening up here. So yeah, I guess that kind of answers that question. Yeah, so I guess we kind of met back at Crackley Woods, where you also met Jimmy back in, is it about June, I think?
About May, I think it was.
May or June, yeah. And I have a kind of, I also do photography, I have a background in photography and dabble in film, and obviously you were wanting to create this film and had got Jimmy involved, and you were both filming for it, so we kind of both got to know each other and had this kind of shared want to document what was happening. But at what point did you kind of really decide that you were gonna focus solely on this and make something that was just about HS2, and like why was it that you decided that?
I think primarily me and Jimmy had both come with experience in the wildlife filmmaking industry, and I think primarily, maybe more so for me, it was for me, I've always had like a passion to want to tell a story about wildlife that involves direct action and acting now, and protest, because I think that's key for saving biodiversity. And I think that was important. That was important to Jimmy as well. I must say, it's unfortunate Jimmy can't join us right now, who's our director of photography, because he's somewhere filming hippos in Africa right now. But he would love to be here. And he's an amazing cameraman, amazing wildlife cameraman as well. Yeah, and I think it was just such an important story to be told. I think we both felt, and we both actually. I came to Crackley with some of when I first went to my first protection camp, one of the first protection camps. I bought my camera gear. He had his camera gear, and I think we're just like, yeah, this needs the rally of the wildlife filmmaking industry behind it, and we wanted to kind of, go in both directions, in that, like, have a story to present to that industry and also bring that industry to the movement. And that's what we were hoping to do and achieve with this. So that, I think we decided pretty early on that we wanted to do that. We actually went to film woodpeckers at Crackley Woods, which is a scene in the documentary. And then from there we were like, yeah, we need to, extend this out and write a documentary, basically. So yeah, that's how it started.
I think that was the first weekend we officially met as well. I remember vividly those woodpeckers at Crackley Woods, because we could hear the chicks every day, literally 24/7, like chirping away in the trees, and we just didn't really know what it was. And then you kind of got up in the tree and we filmed them and realized that it was a woodpecker and that they had their nest right there. That was really exciting.
Yeah, if anyone's never heard a greater spotted woodpecker chick, they don't shut up. They
literally, I don't understand how they do it. They do not stop. It's constant.
Yeah.
And I think it's been really exciting for us, especially because we've both done various different bits of work within the campaign against HS2 for the past, over a year now. So I think it's been very exciting to finally get to release this documentary, especially for you and Jimmy, because you've been working solely on this and tirelessly on this. What do you hope the impact of it is going to be for the campaign and for kind of the greater fight against HS2?
Well, that's a big question. I think our call to action with the film was, like I said, always to draw attention to how direct action and acting now can help save biodiversity. And I'm hoping that it will get more people involved with the movement, and have people join the movement in all different ways. There's lots of different roles and components to a movement. So that's what we're hoping the film will do, I suppose, as a call to action. I'm hoping that it will open up conversation, like I said, like I was previously saying, open up conversation maybe more within other wildlife filmmaking facets to talk about these things more in terms of, in wildlife film, talking about the human nature relationship, and in this case the human nature relationship being HS2 and nature woodlands, and how that is, you know, devastating. So yeah, that's how I'm hoping where the film will take individuals and audiences. So yeah, I think that's a answer that is quite, like, it's quite a big question.
Yeah, and I think one of the really incredible things about the campaign is that it has brought, so obviously a large part of it is about the environmental destruction that's happening, but it has brought so many different people and groups together, even broader than just the kind of climate and environmental justice movement. You know, I mean, obviously Extinction Rebellion has been hugely involved, and Chris Packham and his campaign has been a big part of it, but there are so many more groups and individuals that have taken a part of it, you know, from that kind of animal rights and liberation movement, from like local groups, local people, travelers, loads and loads of different people, squatters, like, yeah, it's really incredible to see all of these groups come together in this resistance. But I think there's definitely, kind of having spent time working with you and Jimmy, and knowing kind of other people that work within kind of wildlife conservation, there is a real kind of deafening silence from that industry when it comes to HS2, considering it's the largest act of deforestation that we've had in this country for over 100 years, and how destructive it is. It's kind of heartbreaking to see the extent to which so many people within the kind of wildlife and conservation and ecology and like industry are not only not speaking out about it, but how many of them are actively kind of contributing it or complicit to it in some way or another. I mean, obviously with Natural England and everything that they're doing to kind of allow HS2 to go ahead, and the extent, like, so for example, the National Trust being under a non-disclosure agreement with HS2s, they can't speak out about it. But then even I mean, we're just gonna call it out here, but even, like, you know, the Woodland Trust and the Wildlife Trust, they have spoken out about it, and they have done various things. The report from the Woodland Trust has been so important, but they're still, considering the scale of this project, considering the extent to how destructive it is, it's a shame that there isn't more of a noise coming from these people that supposedly kind of dedicate their lives to fighting for wildlife. And I think that's what was really so great about what you and Jimmy have done, is because you're some of the few people from that industry that have really kind of dedicated a lot of time and energy and resources to bringing people's attention to this. And the fact that you got Chris involved is just great, and hopefully that'll only support our campaign.
Sorry, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No, you go ahead. I think I was just looking at the chat.
I think, yeah, what was I going to say? Yeah, I think this is one of the things that, you know, when you're writing a documentary and presenting information in that way with a narrative, I think it is also about making people aware of what was going on, because they literally started major felling a week after the first lockdown was announced, because apparently it's essential work to destroy our life support system. Yeah, so a lot of people didn't know what was going on. It's in some spaces happening in the middle of nowhere. So we wanted to bring this, the destruction of wildlife, more, you know, to people's screens, to try and make it more visceral. And, you know, it's difficult to try and see some of this wildlife, let alone film some of it. So, but that's what we wanted to do, to be able to present that. And I think you know, personally, as a conservationist, I would like to see a unity between, you know, the environmental movement and NGOs and the wildlife filmmaking industry. And there is a unity there. I'm not saying that unity doesn't exist, but I think, like, you know, to say that we're all in this together, none of us want the collapse of our ecosystem, especially in the UK, which is one of the most nature depleted countries in the world, or even argue the most nature depleted. And it's scary now. It's some, like you were saying, the impartial kind of tone taken by maybe some organizations, because of how it might seem radical or political, but to some degree I don't even think it could be more radical. I mean, it's like the state of the ecology is pretty bad in this country. I mean, when you look at this year, right, we've had one of the worst years for insect emergence. Blue tip populations, one of our most common songbirds, have plummeted this year, which are all kind of knock-on effects of climate change. We really do need to look at new avenues to start pursuing the ultimate protection of pristine habitats in the UK, like ancient woodlands. Sorry, went on a bit of a lecture there.
No, it's good. It's good. And I think it feeds quite well into kind of what we're doing now, what we were planning to do now, that got a little bit disrupted because of the pandemic, but what we're hoping to do kind of going forward, and kind of the work that we're hoping to do with the mobile ecology team, especially on phase 2. So for those of you that don't know, there is a new team that has been set up within the kind of campaign against HS2, been spearheaded by protesters, very devoted protesters that have been involved for a very long time. And because of the extent to which Natural England has been so negligent in their surveying and their kind of protection of the habitats and the wildlife that is being threatened by HS2, protesters began to take matters into their own hand and started doing a lot of the environmental and ecological surveys that needed doing, and that led to really incredible discoveries happening. So for example, in Jones Hill Wood, where we found the barber stele, and obviously that's shown in the documentary, and that was a huge turning point for the situation at Jones's. So yeah, this team has now traveling up and down the line, and is doing things like bat surveys and setting up trail cams to try and get evidence of badgers and other animals in the woodlands. And so what I've been doing over the past week, to coincide with Stop HS2 North's Truth Trail, which is similar to the Rebel Trail that HS2 Rebellion organised last year. A bunch of locals and protesters are walking the route of part of phase 2 from Lichfield up to Wigan. It's about 90 miles. They're walking that over a week, and I have been joining them for the past few days, but going off on my own little adventures to some of the ancient woodlands that are threatened in phase 2A. Most of them haven't been touched yet. There's kind of initial groundworks happening in most of these areas, but as you can see just from where I am right now in Bluebell Woods in Staffordshire, there's still incredible wildlife and habitats up here, and I've been trying to document places in which surveys and evidence can be gathered, which has been really incredible. And I think a lot of you worked, obviously Ben, you worked very closely with a lot of protesters on the front lines that have been doing a lot of this work, like Steve and Indra, and you guys documented the active badgers around Crackley. And obviously everyone at Jones Hill Wood has been like so crucial in the work being done to document the bats there. How do you think going forward, like your filmmaking, the work we're doing with the film, can kind of work collaboratively with ecological work?
Yeah, I think hopefully it will show people that anyone can get involved with engaging and understanding nature, and therefore being able to protect it. What was really great is that we saw ecologists coming on board to the HS2 campaign to give people trainings and even temporary ecology certifications, which allows them to basically go under the wing of an ecologist and go and find evidence of wildlife species. So it hopefully will go to show that anyone can get involved with protecting endangered species in the UK, and being able to get involved with surveys to do that. It's really crucial. I think what HS2 are relying on was, the British public not knowing enough about endangered animals and how they're protected and where to find them and how it works. And obviously, a lot of these spaces, like I said, are in the middle of nowhere, and that no one will be watching. That they'll be able to get away with this. No one's going to be watching. There's going to be no ecologists, and that's why the camps were so important. Not just to stop the destruction of trees, but to hold HS2 accountable, to be able to witness all sorts of crimes, primarily, quite importantly, wildlife crimes. So I think hopefully if that's highlighted in the film, or people get that from the film, then that's quite an important thing.
And that leads really well onto a question that we've got actually from Facebook, just because there's not as many questions in this chat, but there are a couple that we will get to. But there's one really important one that fits quite well with that from Facebook. Someone asking, let me just get it up so I can read it properly. Is another legal challenge possible, if not regarding the crimes against wildlife, against the lack of current reevaluation for the need of HS2 post-COVID? And I think, it's really interesting. A lot of people don't know the extent to which we're not only occupying forests and living in trees, but there's actually been a lot of legal cases from our side brought against HS2. There was obviously Chris Packham's Stand for the Trees campaign and his legal proceedings that he unfortunately didn't win, but he was working tirelessly on. Sarah Green obviously recently won her legal battle to try and get HS2 to hand over all the information and paperwork that they had on the Chilterns viaduct and the contamination of the aquifer in the Chilterns, and all of their statistics on the extent to which that will contaminate the water of a large population of London. And that was really, really important because that information had been hidden from the public, and especially people that were going to be affected by it. At Jones's, we managed to halt felling because of the findings of Barbasdale bats. And that was an incredible win for the campaign. And unfortunately, that was then overturned and the felling happened anyway, despite the evidence that we found and despite the evidence that showed that wildlife crimes were being committed. The thing with HS2, I think, is that as you say in the documentary, Ben, like it's such a broad and major project that it's impossible for crimes not to be committed, whether that's wildlife crimes or whether that's crimes against people, or whether that's like crimes against protesters or whatever. It's so difficult for them to implement this scheme without breaking the law, and there's dozens and dozens of things that HS2 could be taken to court over, from poisoning people's water to assaulting protesters to stealing local people's home and land, not to mention all of the wildlife crimes that they're committing. The difficulty is, I think, is that firstly, it takes a huge amount of time and resources and money in order to follow through with court proceedings like that. And unfortunately, that's just not something that we have as a kind of grassroots campaign. And also, HS2 is fully backed by our government. It's fully backed and funded by our government. They have an unlimited amount of resources. So I think it's less of a question of whether it's possible for more legal proceedings to be put forward and against HS2. I think it's definitely possible, but it takes a lot of hard work to be able to have anywhere near the amount of platform and leg to stand on to go up against a project like HS2. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that. There's a few more questions coming in. Ben, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Well, I was just going to say it's HS2, and like Dr. Larch Maxey says in the documentary, you kind of scratch the surface, and it kind of shows this corrupt scheme that is our system, the corrupt system that we're in at the moment, this toxic system that doesn't work, that gives us this corrupt project, arguably potentially the most corrupt construction project in Europe. And it's a way, it's a moment for people to stand up against the system and say, no, we don't want this. Stand up against the government and say, no, we don't want this. And this is the thing, that when you decide to make a project like HS2, which is way over budget, they're going to start cutting corners. And when you start cutting corners, you start putting people's and wildlife's life at risk. So it should have just gone, no, this is too expensive. No, we can't afford to lose any more ancient woodlands in the UK. But yeah, it just seems to continue perpetuating. But if we stand up as people and say no, and hold them accountable, and say no, look, we notice what you're we can notice, we're noticing what you're doing. They relied, I think a large part of HS2 only started to go forward because the construction basically started happening during lockdown, when
and people weren't there to witness it.
Like it blows my mind that after a week of first lockdown being announced, they started destroying so many trees. Major felling started to begin because apparently it was needed work at the time, and they were relying on people not noticing. And it's just like completely undemocratic, and people were relying on those spaces. I think that's one of the things that sickens me, is that people were relying on open spaces, green spaces, for their mental health during lockdown, when people were limited to being inside. They weren't allowed outside as often as they are now, but like they were relying on these green spaces, and the government was fencing them off and saying you're not allowed to come into this woodland, even though it's your most local area of greenery. And I think it's ridiculous, basically.
Someone else has just said that they're not hugely engaged with this topic, as it feels like a losing battle as a result of too much control from the government and corporations, and not enough people care. And I think, just like you said just now, Ben, like that's exactly the point. I think when it comes to any oppressive system, when it comes to the implementation of any oppressive system or a project or anything, they rely on the masses, they rely on the general public to turn a blind eye or to feel that any resistance is futile, because that's how they can continue to exploit and oppress people and the planet and everything. And I think that's unfortunately the response that we get from so many people, especially local people that have had to kind of struggle against HS2 for over a decade, whilst the rest of the country didn't even know it was going on. And so many of them have been so exploited and so abused by HS2 already that they really just don't have any motivational energy to fight against it. But I think with any injustice, especially when it comes to a project that is stripping so much away from us in a time that we're already losing so much and that we're already struggling so much as a society, it's so important to continue that resistance. And it may feel futile, but if what I always say is that if anyone that kind of felt the futility of it and doesn't act because of that, if everyone that was in that position thought, I'm just going to do a bit, I'm just going to try a bit, it would make a much bigger difference. I'm just going to look at some of the other questions.
While she's just doing that, I just sort of mentioned that obviously there's two different phases of HS2. There's the first phase, which I guess a substantial amount of construction has happened with the phase 1 so far, but the second phase, there's still time to stop the second phase. And stop even more ancient woodlands from being destroyed, and other habitats, not just ancient woodlands, a number of pristine, important habitats and homes. So yeah, like there's still a lot that can be stopped so far, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah. So there's a lot. Oh, someone's asked from YouTube. Rob has asked. He said he lives near Crackley, and he's asking whether there's still an ongoing resistance there. So Crackley Woods Protection Camp is no longer an open, up and running camp. We started packing that up in February. I think there still needs support. I think there was word of a potential new site popping up in the area. So if there are locals that have capacity and are willing to support, there are still people in the area that are helping to pack down Crackley site and potentially looking to move to a new site There's also Welsh Road, which is still very much active and up and running, which is near Offchurch, which really desperately needs support at the moment because they've just received notification of plans to close the road that it is on in order to widen it, which means that the site there will potentially be evicted. So yeah, Welsh Road Protection Camp, I think they're on social media, but you can also just go along near Offchurch. More questions. Do you feel that unless people are directly affected, they don't care or have the knowledge to be concerned? And
I've got an answer to that.
Go for it.
The one thing, not the one thing, but something that was very important that we highlighted in the documentary is the laws that are being manipulated against pristine habitat protection and wildlife protection. So what HS2 has proved is that our government has the power to rewrite laws for their own agenda. So one of the things that Chris says in the documentary is that if you have a bat roost in your house and you touched that bat roost knowingly or moved it or disturbed it, you would get seriously fined. You know, if HS2 did that, they get the pass. So why is that allowed to happen, number one? Secondly, what I'm leading on to is that HS2 is a gross example that no matter how protected a habitat is, this government has the power to just go and destroy it. So this could happen in your back garden. So unless we stand up to these laws being rewritten and manipulated, then it can happen anywhere. You know, if the government can get away with this, who knows, before they're destroying the environment near you or near your home. So I think it's about the wider scale of the situation as well, not, you know, ancient woodlands being destroyed between Birmingham and London. Like I've never witnessed wildlife protection laws being manipulated in this way ever in my experience in conservation, wildlife conservation. So that's almost the more worrying thing for me, and I think a lot of others, is that aspect of HS2, and that's why it needs to be highlighted. That's, you know, one of the main kind of narratives that we follow in the film. So,
and
yeah.
I think also because obviously, I mean, it's shocking the extent to which we don't, like you said in the film, Chris Packham says that only 4% of wildlife cases brought to court are actually won, and it's shocking that that legislation isn't upheld and that we don't have more strict legislation. But when you think about it with HS2, like the extent to which that they're also committing heinous crimes against people, you know, and people are usually more protected, like not rightfully, but are usually more protected in law than wildlife is. And they're still managing to manipulate the law and get away with so much corruption against people and against families and against local businesses and local people, you know, through their compulsory and temporary purchase orders, and the extent to which they're seizing land from people and not paying them and not even giving them compensation, and causing so many people to become homeless or to lose their income. It's kind of shocking, you know, that the wildlife crimes are being committed, but the extent to which they have literally no regard for legality and kind of just care for this country and the people of this country is just shocking. We've got quite a few coming in from Facebook and YouTube. How Anne Spooner from Facebook says, how exactly do you get a temporary ecological certification?
So basically you need to be trained by an ecologist, a practicing ecologist, I believe, to look for specific species within a bracket. So you could be trained to, say, look for signs of hazel dormice or bat roosts and so forth. So we saw ecologists coming to the camps to train people for those temporary certifications, which is, I think, one of the aims of the mobile ecology team, or, you know, one of the wider kind of goals of the ecology team to be able to do that, because obviously it costs money to, you know, pay for an ecologist. A lot of the ecologists, I will say, came and contributed their time for free, and they're really helpful and really giving. But also, you know, it's tough being an ecologist. That's why, you know, ecologists are working for HS2. You know, I'm not necessarily rooting for any and all of the HS2 ecologists, but work's tough. Like most ecologists have to go into construction work because there's no other work for them. So I think, yeah, like we can support the ecology community as well, which is why we're trying to fundraise for the ecology team. So I think it will need to come from ecologists. I spoke to Kevin not too long ago, who was involved with the film, that said that they might be able to do temporary ecology certifications online, which might be a potential avenue for the team in the future. So yeah, that's how you get a certification.
But I think another really important thing is that what happened at Joneses is a really good example of how people that don't have, you know, extensive experience or qualifications in these areas can still make a big difference just by doing their own surveys. You know, you can get a bat detector and use a bat detector without having any training in it, and just by doing that in that area, they had evidence that then brought down that Kevin Hand, who's a senior ecologist, and then he was able to do the surveys that then provided proof that there were barbastelle bats in that area. So it doesn't take a genius or a professional to do the kind of minimal documentation and evidence gathering in order to find the potential for species that then could mean a lot. Someone else has just asked, Calvin from YouTube has just asked, how much research has been done to research the fungi and mycelium in the area and how the project affects huge ecosystems. Also trees relying on mycelium. I don't know anything about this. I'm not a ecologist or a conservationist or anything. What I will say is part of the negligence of HS2 is the extent to which they bring ecologists in that do the bare minimum of surveying. They do the bare minimum of checking. As we said, like the first time that Ben went to Crackley, they'd said there were no active badger sets, and after one night of setting up trail cams, we found that wasn't true. They do the bare minimum. Natural England has been completely negligent in doing the right work. So when it comes to finding the impact and understanding the impact of HS2 on whole ecosystems and mycelium networks and all of this, like they're not going anywhere near that, you know. And this is the thing, this is the joke about what they're saying about their mitigation and how they're saying that, you know, it's only a small percentage of the ancient woodlands that they're affecting, but they kind of neglect to pick up on the fact that even if you're only chopping down a portion of an ancient woodland, even if you're only chopping down a 16th of it, a few trees, like these are complex, ancient, hundreds of year old ecosystems that work as a system. You know, they don't work as individual trees and individual species. Like it all feeds into the whole system, and you can't hope to destroy part of it without having a severe impact or destroying all of it, you know. But yeah, HS2 from their side is not doing anything to that extent, and yeah, it's just unfortunate the extent to which all of these ecosystems are just going to be destroyed, and we don't even realize the extent to which that will have an impact, you know. I don't know if Ben, you want to add anything onto that?
Yeah, I think in regards, you know, there's more research these days talking about how mycelium is used as for plants to communicate with one another through the root systems, which is amazing research. I see papers and it blows my mind about it. Something that's absolutely ridiculous, right? I don't know, a lot of people might know this on the chat already, but HS2 acknowledge this because people are saying you can't replace an ancient woodland because of these ancient communications that have been established in the soil and the microcosms in the soil and so forth. And they said it's fine. When we fell an ancient woodland, we'll just rip up the stumps, dig up the soil that was underneath the ancient woodland, move it somewhere else, and then plant new saplings into it, and you've got a piece of ancient woodland. And like, how ridiculous is that? Like, the Woodland Trust turned around and said your ecology, your mitigation isn't based on science. Like the Woodland Trust, that's our NGO that's there to manage and look after and research woodlands and ancient woodlands. And it just goes to show, it's almost like a sick joke to them that they do that and think that it could work. And it's just some weird, it really infuriates me. Like they don't even plant saplings properly. Don't get me into that.
Well, as you said, they are literally just rewriting, making up laws and legislation and even science as they go along. Like they're just winging it, really.
It's ridiculous, yeah. And the mitigation is a joke. The mitigation is a joke that they do. It doesn't work. You know, it's really easy. Do you know what? It's so one of my a terminology that I hate with a passion is planting trees, because it sounds great. It's what every like we're gonna plant trees. Yeah, it's really easy to plant trees, and it's really cheap to plant trees. It takes a lot of resource to have to maintain them and make sure that they adapt into an ecosystem. Grow into an ecosystem, a substantial ecosystem, which doesn't happen. You just plant the tree in the ground. Yep, you know, we planted the tree. If it dies, it's not there. It's no business on them, and it doesn't matter. So that's what we're seeing with HS2. You know, they're just planting trees, and they're buying tree saplings probably from their friends. It's a back pocket deal there. I won't go into that. But yeah, it's just like you can do mitigation. We touch upon it in the film properly. Like, there are ways that you can mitigate things properly. Mitigation can work on smaller scale projects, but yeah, like, it's ridiculous. HS2's mitigation, a lot of it isn't done properly either.
Right, I think we should probably start wrapping up there, not least because I am in a woodland and I have very limited phone battery. But thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Please go and watch the film. You can watch it now. It's live on our website, lostalongtheline.com. Follow us on social media, share with all your friends. Make sure you've signed up to our mailing list so that you can get updates, because we'll have more exciting panels and events coming soon. Please support the campaign that is still ongoing. There are so many groups and movements involved in it. It's not just Extinction Rebellion. We're not here. We're very thankful to Extinction Rebellion for letting us use their platform, but we are not here as part of Extinction Rebellion. Right now, the film is not made for Extinction Rebellion. I just want to make that clear. It's for this very broad and beautiful coalition of groups that are involved in the resistance against HS2. There's a lot of information about all of them on our website, which you can look at. Please, if you have the resources, donate to our fundraiser to help us with promotion, and also with our work that we're doing with the mobile ecology team. Or you can also donate directly to that team, but we'll be working very closely with them. And yeah, in the meantime, watch the film and enjoy. And yeah, never give in to futility. Never think you're powerless in the face even of something like this. Thank you. Ben, I don't know if you have anything else you want to say.
Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thank you everyone for supporting the film, and anyone that supported the campaign as well. And yeah, it's the summertime. Go out and check out some nature. It's the time to go out.
Come into a space like this. It's beautiful.
To understand it is to love it, and to love it is to care for it. So, you know, go and go and do some butterflies. You know, it's a great time of year for butterflies. Well, usually it is. It's been a bit of a bad year for insects, but go out.
Let's leave it on a positive note.
Yeah, no, go out and check out your local ancient woodlands, and yeah, embrace some wildlife. But thank you everyone. Thank you, and thanks Talia, and thanks to Richard who stopped us with the stream.
Okay, have a good night everyone.